Johnny Carson was a treasured American icon for decades. As host of The Tonight Show from 1962 to 92, Carson entered viewers' homes each night with his charming wit and celebrity interviews. But behind the scenes, he had a complicated personal life filled with failed marriages and turbulent family relationships. One of the most startling revelations after his death was the news that Carson had an illegitimate biracial granddaughter named Christal Love Carson, whom he disowned when she was born. Now in her late 20s, Christal is finally speaking out about being rejected by her famous grandfather. Carson's Playboy persona masked bigotry. To the American public, Carson cultivated a charming Playboy persona. With his sophisticated comedic talents and parade of beautiful wives, he seemed like the epitome of the swinging bachelor. He played up this image on The Tonight Show, peppering his interviews with flirtatious banter and double entendres aimed at female guests. But behind the harmless on-screen flirting and cavalier mistreatment of women, Carson had a much darker side. According to his second wife, Joanna Holland, he physically and emotionally abused her throughout their marriage. She claimed he broke her nose and threw her down a staircase in fits of drunken rage. He cheated constantly and cruelly told her she was no longer sexually attractive. Carson discarded his wives as soon as they reached middle age, distilling women down to their youth and beauty. He ruined Joanna Holland's self-esteem so completely that after their divorce, she underwent extensive plastic surgery just to feel desirable again. His serial philandering, misogyny, and abuse of spouses remained hidden from audiences. In addition to rampant sexism, more troubling allegations later emerged of outright racism. Former associates claimed Carson spouted racial slurs behind the scenes and strongly opposed interracial relationships. He reportedly prohibited black guests from using his personal toilet and smoking cigarettes in his presence. On air, Carson presented himself as progressive, supporting civil rights and giving a platform to groundbreaking black icons like Martin Luther King Jr. But off-camera, he harbored the same racist attitudes common among white men of his era. Clearly, there was a wide chasm between Carson's public and private personas. Secret affair leads to biracial baby. In the early 80s, Johnny Carson's son Christopher began a clandestine, decade-long affair with an African-American model named Tanena Love. Christopher was living an aimless, leisurely lifestyle in Florida, financially supported by the monthly allowance his father provided. Tanena worked as an entertainer and model while raising her 2 children from previous marriages. Christopher felt compelled to keep the interracial relationship hidden from his disapproving family. But in 1985, Tanena became pregnant with Christopher's child. When Johnny Carson caught wind that his son's illicit girlfriend was expecting a biracial baby, he was reportedly livid. This would make him the grandfather of a mixed-race child, which was unfathomable in his bigoted worldview. According to Tanena, Carson immediately urged his son to leave her for good and make her terminate the pregnancy. But Christopher resisted, still deeply in love with Tanena. For a few months, the issue simmered beneath the surface, but when Tanena reached 6 months into her pregnancy, Carson realized she would indeed be birthing a biracial baby. Tanena says this drove Carson into a vitriolic rage. He despised the thought of his pristine family lineage being tainted by a mixed-race descendant. Carson ruthlessly threatened to completely cut Christopher off from the family fortune if he stayed with Tanena. Without access to Carson's money, Christopher would have no means to support his lavish lifestyle. Faced with this ultimatum, Christopher crumbled under the pressure. He abandoned the pregnant Tanena to appease his father. He left Tanena to raise their biracial daughter alone without offering any emotional or financial support. But the damage was done. Tanena was already carrying the biracial child, the one thing Johnny Carson abhorred above all else. This fraught situation remained hidden from the public. Christal, born into poverty, rejected by the Carson family. In 1986, Tanena Love gave birth to a baby girl she named Christal Love Carson. This was the child she conceived with Christopher before he abandoned her under family pressure. While the Carson family lived in opulence and luxury, little Christal came into the world under much more humble circumstances. Tanena was forced to raise Christal alone in a small trailer park in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Between an entertainment career and 2 older children from previous marriages, providing for an infant as a suddenly single mother proved challenging. but Tanena loved her beautiful daughter and did everything possible to make a stable, nourishing home. Meanwhile, Johnny Carson and his sons seemed determined to pretend Christal didn't exist. While Carson paid for his sons' country club memberships, sports cars, and cosmopolitan lifestyles well into adulthood, his only grandchild lived in near poverty. Christal survived on welfare and Medicaid, subsisting on the bare minimum while her paternal relatives lavished in extravagance. In 1987, when Christal was a year old, Tanena finally sued Christopher for child support. At the time, Christopher hadn't held a job in nearly a decade, yet lived comfortably off the Carsons' dime in an oceanfront property in Fort Lauderdale. He owned 2 late-model cars, had $35,000 in the bank, and benefited from Carson's family investments valued at over $150,000. But in court, Christopher claimed he couldn't possibly afford more than $50 a month in child support for his daughter. His lawyer had the audacity to argue this paltry sum was adequate for an infant, while Tanena's attorney pointed out Christal was living in abject poverty. A judge finally ordered Christopher to pay $175 weekly, still only a fraction of what Carson spent on his adult son's frivolities. Tragically, despite Christal's deep need, her wealthy paternal relatives refused any involvement in her life. Christal speaks out. Now nearing 30 years old, Johnny Carson's estranged granddaughter, Christal Love Carson, is finally speaking publicly about the pain of being rejected by her famous grandfather. Despite never even meeting Carson, she spent much of her youth longing for his love and his validation. According to Christal, she sent Carson loving homemade cards, letters, and photos of herself as a little girl, hoping desperately for any sort of acknowledgement or relationship. But Carson spitefully rejected these innocent overtures, determined to disavow any ties to his biracial grandchild. For young Christal, this cold disregard inflicted deep emotional wounds. She couldn't comprehend why her own grandfather hated her solely for the color of her skin. She ached to be accepted into the wealthy white Carson clan as an equal, but they refused to see beyond the part of Christal that came from her black mother. Now a grounded, introspective woman, Christal holds no bitterness towards Johnny. She said for a long time she was filled with anger and confusion, but now she's made peace with it. She knows he came from a different era and mindset. She wishes she had opened his heart, but she forgives him for not being able to. By bravely sharing her experience, Christal aims to shed light on the harms caused by prejudice. If her story helps even one child feel included and valued, she'll consider it a triumph. She explained her goal is to become a doctor through her own hard work and perseverance. After tragically losing her mother, Tanena, in a 2021 house fire, she found new reservoirs of strength. She's currently completing a pre-med program and aspires to work in pediatrics. Now it's time to hear from you. How does knowing about Johnny Carson's prejudices affect your feelings about the beloved TV host? Let us know in the comments section below.